Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stood on the sidewalk outside Aurelius Restaurant, watching through the window as empty tables remained untouched while the staff claimed they were completely booked. Her silent response to this obvious lie would trigger the biggest scandal in fine dining history. Tell us in the comments, are you watching from your phone while thinking about your own dining experiences? Or maybe while considering how we should treat each other with dignity in all spaces? We want to know where our viewers are tuning in from around the country as we dive into this incredible story of grace under pressure and quiet strength creating lasting change in an industry built on exclusion. It was 7:23 p.m. on a crisp October evening when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez arrived at Aurelius Restaurant on Manhattan's Upper East Side. She had made the reservation 3 weeks earlier through her congressional scheduler, confirming it twice in the days leading up to what was supposed to be a quiet dinner with her longtime friend Maria Santos, a climate activist visiting from California. The restaurant, known for its $300 tasting menu and exclusive clientele, represented exactly the kind of establishment that AOC rarely frequented, but Maria had specifically requested it for their reunion. AOC arrived first, dressed in a simple black dress and modest jewelry that reflected her characteristic style of understated elegance. She carried a small purse and wore comfortable flats, having walked the 6 blocks from the subway station despite the October chill. Her appearance was professional but approachable, the kind of outfit that said she belonged in any setting without trying to impress anyone. The restaurant's exterior oozed the kind of old-money sophistication that Manhattan's elite had cultivated for generations. Heavy wooden doors, brass fixtures polished to perfection, and windows that offered tantalizing glimpses of crystal stemware and white tablecloth. Through the glass, AOC could see approximately 24 tables, with only about half appearing to be occupied by diners enjoying their evening meal. She approached the host stand where an impeccably dressed maitre d' named Charles Whitmore stood reviewing reservation lists on a leather-bound ledger. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his black suit immaculate, and his expression carried the practice-neutral politeness that fine dining establishments cultivated to manage their exclusive atmosphere. "Good evening," AOC said with a warm smile. "I have a reservation for 2 at 7:30 under Ocasio-Cortez." Whitmore's fingers traced down the reservation list, his movements deliberate and theatrical. AOC noticed his pause when he reached what should have been her name, followed by a slight frown that seemed designed to create doubt about the reservation's existence. "I'm sorry, but I don't see a reservation under that name for this evening," Whitmore said, his tone carrying just enough regret to sound apologetic while maintaining an undertone of skepticism about AOC's claim. AOC pulled out her phone and showed him the confirmation email she had received, complete with the restaurant's letterhead and confirmation number. "Here's the confirmation from 3 weeks ago, along with the follow-up email I received on Monday confirming the time." Whitmore glanced at the phone screen with the kind of dismissive attention that suggested he was humoring an inconvenient customer rather than genuinely reviewing evidence. "I'm afraid there must have been some mistake in our system. As you can see, we're completely booked this evening." The statement hung in the air between them, made obviously false by the empty tables visible throughout the dining room. AOC followed Whitmore's gesture toward the restaurant's interior, where she could clearly count at least 8 unoccupied tables, some still set with fresh flowers and unused place settings that indicated they were available for service. "I can see several empty tables from here," AOC said quietly, her voice remaining calm despite the obvious nature of the lie she was being told. "Perhaps there was indeed a system error and one of those tables could accommodate our party of 2. Whitmore's expression hardened slightly, the practiced politeness giving way to something more dismissive. "Those tables are reserved for later seatings, and we have a very strict policy about our reservation system. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the establishments in the area that might better accommodate your need." The suggestion carried an unmistakable undertone that AOC recognized immediately. It wasn't about reservation systems or dining room management. It was about who belonged in spaces like Aurelius and who didn't. The coded language of exclusion that had been refined in establishments like this for decades. AOC understood that she had reached a decision point. She could demand to speak with a manager, could use her congressional position to pressure the restaurant into honoring her reservation, or could simply leave and find dinner elsewhere. Instead, she chose a fourth option that would prove far more powerful than any of those alternatives. "I understand," she said simply, My friend should be arriving shortly, so we'll wait outside until our table becomes available. Whitmore appeared surprised by her response, clearly expecting either angry confrontation or immediate departure. Ma'am, I don't think you understand. We don't have a table available tonight. I heard what you said, AOC replied with the same calm tone. But I have a confirmed reservation and can see empty tables, so I'm confident that something will work out. We'll wait outside. She stepped back from the host station and moved to a position on the sidewalk directly in front of the restaurant's main window, where she had a clear view of the dining room and the empty tables that supposedly didn't exist. Her choice of location was strategic, providing visibility both into the restaurant and for anyone passing by on the busy Manhattan street. The October evening was cool but not uncomfortable, and AOC stood with her hands clasped in front of her, maintaining the same composed demeanor she displayed during difficult congressional hearings. She wasn't protesting or making a scene. She was simply waiting with the kind of patient dignity that made her presence impossible to ignore. Inside the restaurant, she could see Whitmore and other staff members engaged in increasingly animated discussion. The maitre d' made several phone calls, consulted with what appeared to be a manager, and periodically glanced toward the window where AOC maintained her quiet vigil. Other diners began to notice the unusual situation, some pointing discreetly toward the window where a well-dressed woman stood calmly on the sidewalk. After about 5 minutes, Maria Santos arrived at the restaurant, immediately recognizing her friend despite the unexpected location. Alex, what's going on? Why are you standing outside? AOC explained the situation briefly and objectively, avoiding inflammatory language while making the facts clear. They say they don't have our reservation even though we can see empty tables. I thought we'd wait a few minutes to see if something opens up. Maria, a veteran activist with decades of experience recognizing discrimination, understood immediately what was happening. This is ridiculous. Let me go in there and... No, AOC said gently, placing a hand on her friend's arm. Let's just wait and see what happens. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply being present. As the minutes passed, AOC's presence on the sidewalk began attracting attention from pedestrians and other restaurant patrons. Some recognized her as a public figure, while others were simply curious about why a woman was standing so calmly outside an expensive restaurant. Several people discreetly took photos, initially out of celebrity curiosity, but increasingly because the situation appeared obviously unfair. A young couple walking by stopped to ask if everything was all right. AOC explained the situation matter-of-factly, without anger or accusation, simply stating that she had a reservation but was told no tables were available despite visible empty spaces. The couple looked through the restaurant window, counted the unoccupied tables, and shook their heads in disgust. That's completely ridiculous, the woman said. Everyone can see they have empty tables. This is discrimination, plain and simple. By the 10-minute mark, a small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, drawn by curiosity about AOC's presence and increasingly outraged by the obvious injustice of the situation. The contrast between her dignified patience and the restaurant's transparent lie was becoming impossible to ignore. Several people were recording video capturing both AOC's composed demeanor and the clearly visible empty tables inside. Inside Aurelius, the staff's discussions were becoming more urgent. Diners were asking their servers about the situation outside, some expressing discomfort about eating in a restaurant that was apparently discriminating against someone based on their identity. The manager, a nervous man named Robert Chen, appeared to be receiving increasingly frantic instructions via phone call. A businessman who had been dining alone approached the host station and could be seen through the window gesturing toward AOC's location while speaking animatedly to Whitmore. After a brief conversation, he left the restaurant and approached AOC directly. "Excuse me, Congresswoman," he said respectfully. "I just finished my meal inside, and I wanted you to know that I counted at least 6 empty tables that have been available since I arrived an hour ago. What they're doing to you is completely unacceptable. I recorded part of my conversation with the maitre d', and I think people should know about this." AOC thanked him for his concern, but maintained her focus on the broader implication. This kind of treatment happens to people every day who don't have the platform I have. I hope that if you share your video, people will think think about all the times this happens when cameras aren't rolling." The businessman nodded and walked away, but within an hour, his video was already circulating on social media platforms. The footage clearly showed AOC's dignified wait alongside obvious evidence of the restaurant's deception about table availability. Comments began flooding in from viewers sharing their own experiences of discrimination in high-end establishments. At the 15-minute mark, manager Chen emerged from the restaurant, his expression a mixture of anxiety and forced professionalism. He approached AOC with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he was under significant pressure to resolve the situation. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, I sincerely apologize for the confusion. It appears there was indeed an error in our reservation system. We'd be honored to seat you and your guest immediately." AOC looked at him calmly, recognizing both the obvious nature of his reversal and the genuine distress it represented. "Thank you for checking on the reservation. However, I think the 15 minutes we've spent waiting have been quite educational for everyone involved." She paused, looking through the restaurant window at the diners inside, many of whom were now watching the interaction with obvious discomfort. "I hope this experience helps your staff think about how they treat all their guests, not just the ones who happen to be public figures." Chen's face reddened with embarrassment as he realized that AOC was declining to enter the restaurant despite his offer. "Please, Congresswoman, we'd really like to make this right. Your table is ready." "I'm sure it is now," AOC replied with gentle firmness. "But Maria and I have decided to find somewhere else for dinner. Thank you for your time." She turned to Maria, who had watched the entire interaction with a mixture of admiration and fury. "Come on, let's find that little Ethiopian place you mentioned earlier. I think we'll have a much more genuine dining experience there." As they walked away, leaving Chen standing awkwardly on the sidewalk, AOC could hear the buzz of conversation from the crowd that had gathered. Some people applauded her dignified handling of the situation, while others expressed outrage about the discrimination they had witnessed. The video footage from multiple sources began circulating immediately, showing the complete timeline from AOC's calm wait to the restaurant's eventual capitulation. The visual evidence was undeniable. A confirmed reservation had been dishonored, empty tables had been claimed to be unavailable, and only public pressure had forced the establishment to reverse its position. Within hours, the hashtag number AURELIUSGATE was trending on social media, with thousands of users sharing their own stories of discrimination in high-end restaurants. The comment threads became repositories for experiences that revealed systematic patterns of exclusion based on race, class, accent, and appearance. Food critics and industry publications initially tried to defend Aurelius, suggesting that reservation mix-ups were common and that AOC had overreacted to a simple mistake. However, the video evidence made these explanations impossible to sustain, particularly when combined with the growing number of similar stories from other customers. The investigation that followed revealed a pattern of discriminatory practices at Aurelius and several other high-end establishments. Former employees came forward with accounts of management instructions to discourage certain types of customers, coded language used to identify undesirable reservations, and systematic efforts to maintain an exclusive clientele through discriminatory means. Charles Whitmore, the maitre d', who had initially denied AOC's reservation, was terminated within a week. Manager Robert Chen received formal disciplinary action, and the restaurant's ownership was forced to implement comprehensive staff training programs focused on eliminating discriminatory practices. More significantly, the incident sparked broader conversations about accessibility and inclusion in fine dining. Restaurant industry publications began examining their role in perpetuating exclusive cultures, while culinary schools started incorporating lessons about hospitality ethics and equal service standards. AOC's response to the incident became a model for handling discrimination with dignity and effectiveness. Rather than using her position to force her way into the restaurant or publicly attacking the staff, she had allowed her patient presence to expose the injustice while maintaining her own integrity throughout the process. In a statement released several days later, AOC wrote, "What happened at Aurelius happens in establishments across the country every day. The difference is that I have a platform platform to bring attention to these issues and the privilege of knowing that my treatment will be scrutinized. We should expect better service and more genuine hospitality for everyone, regardless of their background or public profile. The statement was praised across party lines for its focus on systematic improvement rather than personal grievance. Even political opponents acknowledged that AOC had handled a difficult situation with remarkable grace and had used the attention to highlight important issues rather than seeking sympathy or political advantage. The long-term impact extended far beyond Aurelius to influence policies and practices throughout the hospitality industry. Restaurant reservation systems began implementing transparency measures to prevent discriminatory practices, while industry associations developed new standards for equal service regardless of customer demographic. Educational institutions began using the incident as a case study in civil rights, peaceful resistance, and the power of dignified responses to injustice. The 15-minute wait became a symbol of how individual integrity could catalyze systematic change when combined with public accountability and institutional willingness to reform. Most significantly, AOC's response demonstrated that sometimes the most effective way to challenge unfair systems is not through confrontation but through grace that highlights the contrast between reasonable behavior and unreasonable treatment. Her quiet strength had not only protected her own dignity, but had created lasting improvements in policies that affected countless other diners. The lesson resonated far beyond restaurant reservation systems to any situation where individuals face discrimination or unfair treatment. AOC had shown that maintaining dignity under pressure could be more powerful than anger or resistance in creating meaningful change. Her example inspired others facing similar situations to document their experiences, advocate for fair treatment, and maintain their composure even when subjected to obviously discriminatory behavior. The ripple effects of her dignified response continued long after the initial incident, creating a model for civil rights advocacy in the digital age. In the end, what could have been simply another instance of restaurant discrimination had become a catalyst for industry-wide reform and a demonstration of how quiet dignity could change entire systems. AOC had proven that sometimes the most powerful statement is made not through words, but through grace under pressure that exposes injustice while maintaining personal integrity. Click subscribe to see more stories of quiet dignity creating lasting change and how individual grace can challenge unfair systems. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video. God bless you and God bless America.